here. And we got the first of our two clutch plates. So allow us to hang that on there without it falling off of my face. I'll see if I can get my new bell housing on without too much heartache. Okay, we got our little adapter fittings that allow us to go from the stock quick disconnect on the slave cylinder or the hydraulic throwout to a threaded 3AN fitting. This same setup is on the master cylinder, and it's not just a threaded fitting. This little guy goes in here, and then this roll pin secures it. So it's on the master cylinder on the firewall. It's nothing you can get at easily to drive out with a hammer and a drift. And apparently nobody sells the female portion of this quick disconnect. There are companies that sell the male portion, but that would only allow me to put a different master cylinder on the stock throwout bearing. And once I threw it all together, pushed the clutch and it just went to the floor. Now there might be enough stroke on this cylinder to bleed it in order to get the correct gap and actuation, but once I had everything bolted in there with the new transmission and scatter shield bell housing, this was actually jammed up where the transmission and bell housing met. You can probably see there was a bit of friction actually getting it to sit in there. So that was locked in one position, especially after you bolted to the transmission, and it jammed this into one side of the port where you would, run a socket in to open up in order to bleed this slave cylinder. So without being able to put a socket on there, I couldn't even try to bleed this and get some actuation on the clutch. So what I've done, I think I mentioned before, was I took the throwout bearing from the kit I was going to use on the Regal eventually, put that hydraulic throwout on the transmission, and it has obviously a procedure for getting the correct gap, just measuring from the face of the clutch to the face of the bell housing, and then the face of the transmission to the face of the clutch, what would be the clutch, the throwout bearing face where this sits, and then you shim it out to the correct depth. So without trying to mess with this and just kind of make it work, I know that I've got the correct gap on the other hydraulic throwout bearing. But the problem is connecting my new 3AN clutch line. Since nobody makes a female adapter, I have to use this guy, but the fitting on the master cylinder itself, the clutch master cylinder, is the same type of connection as this one right here. So you have to drive out the roll pin, pull the fitting, and replace it with one of these guys. Well, there isn't any space to reach that. The brake booster sits right over the whole thing, and you can't hardly feel the bottom of the master cylinder, let alone get a drift pin and a hammer in there. So I've had to remove the brake booster, which was a little less painful than I thought it would be. You can see here I've got the booster out. Luckily, this plastic cowl portion, once you pull the retaining pins in it, is flexible enough to work that booster out once you roll the master cylinder off to the side. And then we can see our clutch master cylinder here. That is, that's that roll pin there. So we'll end up driving that out, pulling this fitting and replacing it with those adapters. Originally I thought I could get away with unbolting this clutch master cylinder, pulling it out, and being able to work on it in the engine bay. But that was not the case. The master cylinder basically just blocked any kind of, you really couldn't even get this bolt that has the threaded ends where it bolts on inside the firewall. Couldn't even get that out. So had to remove the brake booster. It wasn't nearly as painful as I thought it would be. Just getting at the nuts from inside the firewall. Luckily, they're easy enough to get to with a ratchet and extension and a couple extensions and a little wobbly multi-angle adapter, and get all the nuts off of there. It'll be a trick to get them all back on, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. So I'm going to bolt this clutch master cylinder back up so it's solid, and then drive that roll pin out, and we'll put our adapter in there, and then we'll be able to carry on with this bit of the project.